What really happened in those final, quiet minutes before one of China's most beloved actresses collapsed in plain sight, and why does the official explanation feel dangerously incomplete? Because what began as a routine departure suddenly spiraled into one of the most unsettling entertainment incidents of the year, leaving fans frozen between fear, anger, and disbelief as news broke that Zhao Lusi and Lu Yuning were forced to cancel their flight to Beijing after a sudden medical emergency erupted inside the airport terminal, an emergency so alarming that eyewitnesses say the atmosphere shifted instantly from celebrity glamour to raw panic, with security staff scrambling, passengers stepping back in shock, and whispers spreading faster than facts, because Zhao Lusi did not simply faint. She reportedly lost strength, color, and balance in a way that suggested something had been wrong long before she ever reached the departure lounge, raising the first terrifying question that no press release can erase. If this was just exhaustion, why did it look like her body had been signaling distress for hours, maybe days, before finally giving up? And why was she still being pushed forward, still traveling, still expected to smile and perform? Even as witnesses claim she was visibly pale, leaning against walls, pausing mid-step as if fighting dizziness, moments that now replay relentlessly in the minds of those who saw them and in the imaginations of millions who didn't, because once an image enters the public consciousness, it refuses to stay quiet, especially when management statements arrive late, carefully worded, and noticeably vague, describing the collapse as the result of low blood sugar and fatigue while offering no clear confirmation of her condition afterward, no hospital name, no recovery timeline, no reassurance strong enough to calm a fan base that knows something doesn't add up. And standing beside her during this unraveling moment was Lu Yuning, a man known for discipline, composure, and control, whose reportedly urgent reaction and immediate call for medical assistance has fueled speculation that this was not a sudden surprise to him, that perhaps warning signs had already appeared. Signs that insiders now claim are far too common in an industry where 18 to 20-hour workdays are normalized, rest is treated as weakness, and peak popularity is monetized at any cost. Because Zhao Lusi's recent schedule alone reads less like a career and more like a survival test, back-to-back dramas, non-stop brand endorsements, constant travel across provinces, appearances stacked so tightly together that even ordinary sleep becomes a luxury. And when fans began compiling timelines showing she had been working or appearing publicly on more than 40 days out of the last month and a half, the narrative shifted from isolated incident to systemic failure, prompting former industry professionals to break their silence and confirm what many suspected. But few dared to say openly that collapses, hospitalizations, and health crises happen far more often behind the scenes than the public ever knows, quietly managed, carefully buried, because contracts, profits, and reputations depend on the illusion of endless stamina, and the most disturbing part may not be the collapse itself, but the culture that leads directly to it, where seeking medical help can brand an artist as unreliable, where exhaustion is praised as dedication, and where young stars at the height of their popularity are squeezed hardest, precisely because the window to profit from them is considered dangerously short, turning human limits into inconvenient obstacles rather than warning signs. And as discussions intensified across social media platforms, fans began sharing archived interviews, behind-the-scenes clips, and offhand remarks that once seemed insignificant but now feel chilling in retrospect. Moments where Zhao Lusi joked about not sleeping, about forgetting meals, about powering through dizziness because everyone else is working too, comments that were once celebrated as evidence of professionalism but now read like quiet cries for relief that went unanswered, and the deeper people looked, the clearer the pattern became, an industry that rewards silence, endurance, and obedience far more than honesty or self-preservation, where young performers are often shielded from the public by layers of management while simultaneously being exposed to relentless demands that leave no room for weakness. And this is why the airport incident struck such a nerve, because it happened in a place where control briefly slipped, where cameras were everywhere but scripts were not, where the human body finally interrupted the carefully managed narrative, forcing everyone watching to confront the uncomfortable reality that even the brightest stars are still fragile, still human, still subject to limits that no contract can override. And yet, instead of transparency, what followed was hesitation, delay, and corporate language that seemed designed not to inform but to contain, sparking frustration among fans who felt they were being asked to accept an explanation without being trusted with the full truth. And as hours passed with no concrete updates, speculation filled the vacuum, some fearing long-term health consequences, others questioning whether Zhao Lusi had been pressured to downplay symptoms, and still others asking why the flight was allowed to proceed at all if her condition was visibly deteriorating, questions that management statements did little to answer. And while it is important to avoid reckless conclusions, it is equally impossible to ignore the mounting evidence that this was not an isolated fluke, but rather a predictable outcome of sustained overwork. Because medical professionals who commented generally on similar cases have long warned that chronic exhaustion combined with irregular eating, dehydration, and stress can lead to sudden collapses that appear without warning to outsiders, but are often preceded by weeks of internal strain, warning signs that are easy to dismiss until the moment the body refuses to cooperate any longer. And this context makes Lu Yuning's role even more closely scrutinized, not because of wrongdoing, but because of proximity, because he was there, because he saw her condition in real time, and because his reportedly swift and distressed reaction suggests an awareness that something was seriously wrong. And yet his public silence has become a canvas onto which fans project both concern and expectation, with some defending his right to privacy and others hoping he might eventually speak out in support of healthier working conditions, especially given his own reputation for maintaining an intense dual career in both music and acting. And as the conversation expands beyond these two individuals, it begins to encompass the broader ecosystem of Chinese entertainment, where enormous financial stakes create an environment in which slowing down feels impossible, where production delays can cost millions, endorsements hinge on constant visibility, and schedules are planned with little margin for human unpredictability, creating a system that functions smoothly only as long as bodies comply, and when they don't, the incident is framed as unfortunate rather than inevitable. But fans are increasingly unwilling to accept that framing, especially younger audiences who are more vocal about mental health, labor rights, and sustainable careers, and who see in this incident a reflection of pressures that exist not only at the top but throughout society, making Zhao Lusi's collapse resonate far beyond fandom, transforming it into a symbol of a larger conversation about how much is too much, and whether success should require self-erasure. And even as official channels urge calm and promise rest and recovery, the lack of specificity continues to undermine trust, because reassurance without details feels hollow when the stakes are this high. And as days pass, the hope among fans is not just for Zhao Lusi's safe recovery, but for meaningful change, for enforced rest periods, transparent medical protocols, and a shift in how dedication is defined, away from silent suffering and toward long-term well-being, because the fear lingering beneath all this discussion is not just about what happened, but about what could happen again, to another young star, another crowded terminal, another moment when the illusion finally cracks, and until the industry confronts the realities it has long avoided. These incidents will continue to surface like fault lines after an earthquake, reminders that no amount of fame can insulate a human body from its limits. And now, with Lu Yuning remaining publicly silent, fans dissect every past interview, every shared appearance, every moment of visible concern, wondering what he knows, what he saw, and whether this incident will finally force the industry to confront its own reflection, because this is no longer just about one canceled flight or one actress collapsing at an airport. It is about how much more the system expects before it breaks someone completely. And as millions continue to refresh their screens waiting for real answers, one truth has already surfaced, loudly and uncomfortably, that beneath the polished smiles and flawless dramas lies a machine that does not slow down on its own, and unless something changes, this moment will not be the last. Thank you for staying with us through this unfolding story. If you value honest reporting and want to stay informed as more details emerge, don't forget to subscribe to 24H News. TM, share your thoughts respectfully in the comments, and let us know what you believe is really happening behind the scenes.